Welcome back all. Our next topic is the factors affecting immunogenicity. There are mainly two type of factors, the nature where that is the nature of the immunogen and based on the biological system. The nature of the immunogen, the foreignness, molecular size, chemical composition and complexity, degradability, lipids as antigen. There are the types of the nature of the immunogen. And based on the biological system, there are genotype, immunogen, dosage and route of administration, adjuvant. Let's see the detail about them. Factors affecting immunogenicity. To protect against infectious disease, the immune system must be able to recognize bacteria, bacterial products, fungi, parasites, and virus as immunogens. In fact, the immune system actually recognizes particular macromolecules of an infectious agent, generally either protein or polysaccharide. Proteins are the most potent immunogens, with polysaccharides ranking second. In contrast, lipids and nucleic acids of an infectious agent generally do not serve as immunogens unless they are complexed with proteins or polysaccharides. Immunogenicity is determined in part by four properties of the immunogen: its foreignness, molecular size, chemical composition and complexity, and the ability to process and presented with an MHC molecule on the surface of an antigen presenting cells or altered self-cell. The first is the foreignness. In order to elicit an immune response, a molecule must be recognized as non-self by the biological system. The capacity to recognize non-self is accompanied by tolerance of self, a specific unresponsiveness to self-antigens. Much of the ability to tolerate self-antigens arises during the lymphocyte development, during which immature lymphocytes are exposed to self-components. Antigens that have not been exposed to immature lymphocytes during this critical period may be later recognized as non-self or foreign by the immune system. When an antigen is introduced into an organism, the degree of its immunogenicity depends on the degree of its foreignness. For example, the common experimental antigen bovine serum albumin is not immunogenic when injected into a cow, but is strongly immunogenic when injected into a rabbit. Moreover, BSA would be expected to exhibit greater immunogenicity in a chicken than in a goat, which is more closely related to bovines. The second is the molecular size. There is a correlation between the size of a macromolecule and its immunogenicity. The most active immunogens tend to have a molecular mass of 1 lakh daltons. Generally, substances with a molecular mass less than 5,000 to 10,000 dalton are poor immunogens, although a few substances with a molecular mass less than 1,000 dalton have proven to be immunogenic. Third is the chemical composition and heterogeneity. The size and the foreignness are not by themselves sufficient to make a molecule immunogenic. Other properties are needed as well. For example, synthetic homopolymers, that means polymers composed of a single amino acid or sugar, tend to lack immunogenicity regardless of their size. Studies have shown that copolymers composed of different amino acids or sugars are usually more immunogenic than homopolymers of their constituents. These studies show that chemical complexity contributes to immunogenicity. In this regard, it is notable that all four levels of protein organization, that is primary, secondary, tertiary and quaternary, contribute to the structural complexity of a protein and hence affect its immunogenicity. Next, the fourth one is the lipids as the antigens. Appropriately presented, lipoidal antigens can induce B and T cell responses. For the stimulation of the B cell response, Lipids are used as haptens and attach to suitable carrier molecules such as proteins, keyhole, lipid, hemocyanin that is KHL or bovine serum albumin. By immunizing with these lipid protein conjugates, it is possible to obtain antibodies that are highly specific for the target lipids. Using this approach, antibodies have been raised against a wide variety of lipid molecules, including the steroids, complex fatty acid derivatives, and fat-soluble vitamins such as vitamin E. Such antibodies are of considerable practical importance since many clinical assays for the presence and amounts of medically important lipids are antibody-based. For example, a determination of the level of a complex group of lipids known as leukotrienes can be useful in evaluating asthma patients. Uh, Prednisone, a immunosuppressive steroid, is often given as a part of effort to prevent the rejection of transplanted organ. The T cells also recognize T cells recognize the peptide derived from protein antigens when they are presented as peptide MHC complexes. However, some lipids can also be recognized by the T cells. Lipoidal compounds such as glycolipids and some phospholipids can be recognized by T cell receptors when presented as complexes with molecules that are very much like MHC molecules. These lipid-presenting molecules are members of the CD1 family and are close structural relatives of class 1 MHC molecules. The lipid molecules recognized by the CD1 T cell receptor system all appear to share the common feature of a hydrophobic portion and a hydrophilic head group. The hydrophobic portion is a long-chain fatty acid or alcohol, and the hydrophilic head group is composed of highly polar groups that often contains carbohydrates. Recognition of lipids is a part of immune response to some pathogens, and the T cells that recognize lipids arising from Mycobacterium tuberculosis and Mycobacterium leprae, which respectively cause tuberculosis and leprosy, have been isolated from humans infected by these mycobacteria. The fifth one is the susceptibility to antigen processing and presentation. The development of both humoral and cell-mediated immune responses require interaction of T cells with antigen that has been processed and presented together with MHC molecules. Large insoluble macromolecules generally are more immunogenic than small soluble ones because the larger molecules are more readily phagocytosed and processed. The macromolecules that cannot be degraded and presented with the MHC molecule are poor immunogens. This can be illustrated with polymers of D amino acids, which are stereoisomers of the naturally occurring L amino acids. Because the degradative enzymes within antigen presenting cells can degrade only proteins containing L amino acids, polymers of D amino acids cannot be processed and thus are poor immunogens. Even if a macromolecule has the properties that contribute to immunogenicity, its ability to induce an immune response will depend on certain properties of the biological system that the antigen encounters. These properties include the genotype of the recipient, the dose and the route of antigen administration, and the administration of substances called adjuvants that increase immune response. Next is based on the biological system. The first one in this is the genotype of the recipient animal. The genetic constitution of an immunized animal influence the type of the immune response the animal manifests as well as the degree of the response. For example, Hugh C. David showed that two different inbred strains of mice responded very differently to a synthetic polypeptide immunogen. After exposure to the immunogen, one strain produced high levels of serum antibody, whereas the other strain produced low levels. When the two strains were crossed, the F1 generation showed an intermediate response to the immunogen. By back cross analysis, the gene controlling immune responsiveness was mapped to a subregion of the major histocompatibility complex. These data indicate that MHC gene products which function to present processed antigens to T cells play a central role in determining the degree to which an animal responds to an immunogen. The response of an animal to an antigen is also influenced by the genes that encode B cell and T cell receptors and by the genes that encode various proteins involved in immune regulatory mechanisms. Genetic variability in all of these genes affects the immunogenicity of a given macromolecule in different animals. Second is the immunogen dosage and route of administration. Each experimental immunogen exhibits a particular dose response curve which is determined by measuring the immune response to different doses and different administration routes. An antibody response is measured by determining the level of antibody present in the serum of immunized animals. Evaluating the T cell responses is less simple but may be determined by evaluating the increase in the number of T cells bearing the TCRs that recognizes the immunogen. Some combination of optimal dosage and route of administration will induce a peak immune response in a given animal. An insufficient dose will not stimulate an immune response either because it fails to activate enough lymphocytes or because in some cases certain ranges of low doses can induce a stage of immunological unresponsiveness or tolerance. Conversely, an excessively high dose can also induce tolerance. A single dose of most experimental immunogens will not induce a strong response. Rather, repeated administration over a period of weeks is usually required. Such repeated administrations or boosters increase the clonal proliferation of antigen-specific T cells or B cells and thus increase the lymphocyte populations specific for the immunogen. Experimental immunogens are generally administered parenterally. Para means around, enteric means gut. That is, by routes other than the digestive tract. The following are the common administration routes. Intravenous into the vein, intradermal means into the skin, subcutaneous beneath the skin, intramuscular means into the muscle, intraperitoneal into the peritoneal cavity. The administration route strongly influences which immune organs and cell populations will be involved in the response. Antigen administered intravenously is carried first to the spleen, whereas antigen administered subcutaneously moves first to local lymph nodes. The last is the adjuvants. The adjuvants are substances that, when mixed with an antigen and injected with it, enhance the immunogenicity of that antigen. Adjuvants are often used to boost the immune response when an antigen has low immunogenicity or when only small amount of an antigen are available. For example, the antibody response of mice to immunization with BSA can be increased 5-fold or more if the BSA is administered with an adjuvant. They appear to exert one or more of the following effects, that is, antigen persistence is prolonged, co-stimulatory signals are enhanced, local inflammation is increased, the non-specific proliferation of lymphocytes is stimulated. The aluminum potassium sulfate, alum, prolongs the persistence of antigen. When an antigen is mixed with alum, the salt precipitates the antigen. Injection of this alum precipitate result in a slower release of the antigen from the injection site, so that the effective time of the exposure to the antigen increases from a few days without adjuvant to several weeks with the adjuvant. The alum precipitate also increases the size of the antigen, thus increasing the likelihood of the phagocytosis. So that's all about the factors affecting the immunogenicity. Hope you all understood. Thank you.